Hey, hey, hey. Thursday nights are great. The weekend starts, you got one more day of work. You go into this weekend. It's not, we're gravitating out of football season. People are starting to really talk about baseball. What a great time of year. There's all kinds of great college basketball going on. There's just a ton of stuff to talk about. But, I, I feel like I feel like a lot of people aren't paying enough attention to some of these free agent moves. We're at that point in the offseason now where these free agents are flying off the shelves hot. I mean, every couple minutes, it seems, you see a different free agent sign. And that's good to talk about, right? Because there for a while, there wasn't much going on. So that's a sign that the season's getting near. Some of these top name free agents are signed, so things will trickle down after that. It just makes for good news. This week, I decided to talk about, what is going to be one of the most competitive divisions in baseball, what these teams have done, who these teams have signed, who they might yet sign, what their payroll looks like, and in some of these cases, what their minor league prospects look like. I'm talking, of course, about the NL East. So we'll be having a good discussion tonight about these teams in the National League East and what their end game is in terms of how they might approach going into the season. Before we do that, Chap's Fantasy Chat, Thursday nights at 8. Come back at you at 10 o'clock with a little bit more of a mixed show. We talk about football, hot stove. We talk about baseball, college basketball. So I'm going to talk about it all with you tonight. But this first hour, I like to keep designated for baseball. And believe it or not, we're getting to that time of the year when you're going to have to really put your research into hyperdrive if you haven't been paying attention, because drafts are going to start happening quickly. We got about a month and a half before, not even a month, man. Crap, that's crazy. It flies by. We have about a month before this season starts. So we're going to start next week. I'm going to start bringing in, breaking down our lists and talking about who versus who. But up until this point, I felt it necessary because there's just too many pieces still out there to talk about free agents and talk about team strategies. It's kind of fun because you don't normally get to do that. But this year we are. Okay, so let's get to this. First off, I told you, there's been a lot of movement in free agents this week. I'm not going to go down through the list and name all these names, but I think it's important because we may have missed some of these. I'll tell you, it's even tough when you're researching it because it happens so fast. Some of these guys get past you. Even a guy like Darren O'Day signed last night for the Yankees. Doesn't seem like a big signing on the surface, but if you think about what they did, they just dumped $10 million of salary or $8 million of salary for Adam Ottavino, sending him over to the Red Sox, who, by the way, are already cash strapped. They're the third highest payroll in the majors. I mean, I've had a lot of fun deep diving into these payrolls because I think it's indicative, one, of what teams are trying to do if they're willing to go. For the Mets, for instance, we'll talk about them a little bit. Right now they're sitting, I think, at third highest payroll, but they're well positioned to even get up above, be the highest payroll in the majors. Steve Cohen don't give a flip. He's already come out and said it. I'm making my money at my day job. I'm here to put a good product on the field. That's what you want to hear as a Mets fan, right? So they're positioned a little bit differently than, say, maybe the Braves. Actually, everybody else in that division, right? If we're just being honest. But a team like the Braves, who have all but said that, they're going to be thrifty. They're going to, be a little bit more judicious in some signings, and they're going to work on some of their prospects because they've built a strong farm. So holistically, we're going to talk about these teams, but we're also going to drill down on, where their payroll's been, what they might be looking for. So let's talk about these guys that have signed this week real quick before we get into that, okay? So this week, and again, I tried to do the guys that are fantasy relevant. That's where I come from. So Steven Matz just went to the Jays for 2 prospects. That should be a good sign there for him. I've never been a big Matz fan, but the Jays seem to be investing heavily in their team this year, built to win now. Tanaka going back to Japan. I'm not going to try the Golden Eagles of the Nippon Professional Baseball League. Tohoku. Hope I didn't butcher that too bad. Those are 2 big moves today. Yesterday there was a plethora of moves, like I said, Darren O'Day, Wilson Ramos to the Tigers for $2 million. I feel like that's a really good sign there for them. $2 or $2 million for a guy who's hit over 15 homers in 3 of the last 4 years. I think that's a good deal. Welcome, Durf. I haven't heard that one yet, but I think that would be, he definitely wants to play out on the West Coast, right? So that'd be interesting. He's talking about he mentioned Trevor Bauer of the Angels. We'll talk about Bauer a little bit later. He's definitely the big piece, right? At this point, he's the piece. Everything's predicated off of him. So Freddie Galvis to Baltimore. Andrelton Simmons signed a $10.5 million contract to go to Minnesota. Interesting. He brings superior defense. I feel like that's a little bit expensive, but that's okay. You're not going to get better defense at shortstop, like I said. JT Realmuto re-signed with the Phillies, 5-year, $115 million, the highest average salary per year for a contract or for a catcher ever at $23.1 million. Obviously, I was reading something yesterday that said that he's caught the most innings since 2015, or it was second most behind Yadi Molina. So he's been consistent. He's a really good he's a really good framer of the pitch. So basically, if you're a framer, if you're not familiar with the term, bringing the ball back into the zone. So if you're painting the black part being the rubber around the plate, you want to bring those in. So it helps pitchers. It helps pitchers get strikes that might not be strikes. So he's one of the best in the game at that. And then his offensive ability, that's a really big sign for the Phillies. They may have overpaid a little bit for him, but you know what? I'm not going to split hairs with them on that. They want to win now, and they're doing what they're supposed to do. So hats off for them for that. Semien to the Blue Jays again. That's an interesting sign. 1 year, $18 million for Marcus Semien. He obviously is a good player. He's been proven. That's one of those guys, though, that Semien's kind of thought of as a shortstop. I guess second base as well. Obviously, the Blue Jays have Bo Bichette. They're not going to move him. I would imagine Biggio probably moves out to the outfield pretty much every day because Semien's going to play. He might play third base as well. That's an option too. But $18 million seems steep for Marcus Semien. I know he's had some really good years. It'll be interesting to see how he does in the Rogers Center, which is notoriously a hitter-friendly park. And don't forget they didn't get to play there last year. And I don't know if they'll get to play there this year, honestly. But even if they do, Buffalo is hitter-friendly as well. So that's definitely a good environment for Semien to go into. The day before that, like I said, Adam Ottavino to the Red Sox. That hasn't happened much. I think I read it happened twice since Babe Ruth that the Red Sox and the Yankees have made trades. Ottavino is certainly a good pitcher. He seems to be a little bit overpaid, and to send him off to a team who's already cash-strapped and not necessarily a contender seems to me to be pretty strategic for the Yankees, right? Let's take this team that's already not as good as they've been in years past, and they're cash-strapped, and let's give them another salary. Whereas now the Yankees can go out and do whatever they want with that $8 million plus, right? So strategic move for the Yankees. I like it. The Nationals acquired Brad Hand. That's big for them. I mentioned, I think last week, that the Nationals could use some help in the bullpen. And then, of course, the Yankees trade with the Pirates. Sorry, Durf. I'll tell you. I think I told you the other night. I like this move for the Pirates. I like what Ben Sherrington is doing. Obviously, Jameson Taillon isn't going to help you win this year. So if you can get 4 guys and you got 4 top 20 prospects for the Yankees, I know that doesn't sound great, but when you're a team like the Yankees and you've got so much invested in international cash and, draft capital and any sort of, prospect you can get your hands on, you're going to get the Yankee name in and of itself. People want to play there, right? So to get 4 players the caliber that they did is really special. I think all 4 of these guys could contribute. Now, they're all quite a few years away, right? But that's okay because all of the prospects are quite a few years away. Talk about more about the Pirates, in the upcoming weeks. But Taillon, he's one of those guys that you just don't know what you're getting this year. I think he's more of for the second half of the year and even into the future. Really interesting 1-2 combo. Well, I don't know if it's 1-2. The ex-Pirate combo of Garrett Cole and Jameson Taillon. If you're a Pirate fan, that has to be a little bittersweet. I don't know if you cheer for the Yankees because of those 2 guys or you cheer against the Yankees because of those 2 guys. That's not for me to say. But just the talent that goes out of that system consistently in the past, it's got to be frustrating for Pirates fans to watch. No offense, Durf. Garrett Richards, 1-year, $10 million deal with the – I can't believe I didn't write it down. Help me out, Durf. I think it was the Red Sox. I think it was the Reds, going off memory. Steel Chap, guys. Nothing gets in or out. Garrett Richards, $10 million deal. That is a great lottery ticket. I talked about that last week where, a lot of these players, if you're a team that might be building for the future, signing guys like Richards is huge because if they come back to form, Mike Foltynewicz, there's a bunch of them out there. Chris Archer, if they come back to form, you can really trade him for a song because pitching's always going to be necessary, right? Pitching's always going to be needed. So Garrett Richards, again, I believe it's the Red Sox, for $10 million is a lottery ticket. It's a $10 million lottery ticket. But Garrett Richards, when he was healthy earlier in his career, was one of the better pitchers of baseball. So it could work out well for them. And then, of course, I kind of gapped this last week, so I guess I'll take a minute to apologize for saying that George Springer did sign with the Blue Jays. I got him and Michael Brantley mixed up last week. Great pickup for the Blue Jays. It's one of those guys you put him there and set it and forget it, and you're getting to be that way with a lot of these positions for these young Blue Jays. And having a guy like George Springer is just a godsend to anchor down that lineup. You got these guys that might not have as much experience, but a ton of talent. To put them with a guy like Springer who's been through the battles, who's seen the big games, who's hitting the big games, who knows how to lead, who knows how to play defense in center field. It's just the total package. That, to me, might be the signing of the offseason because that is just what the Blue Jays need. Of course, Kiki Hernandez with the Red Sox, I think that's a great sign for them as well. 2-year, $14 million seems to me to be a deal. He seems like he's going to play every day at second base, but his ability to play all over the field, he's played every position but catcher fairly extensively. And he's actually pitched out of the bullpen as well. I'm not saying he's going to do that, right? But, it just speaks to his versatility. And, that left-handed bat in the lineup is certainly going to help them with that short porch in right field in Boston. He's a good sign for this offense. He fits well into that lineup. I'd imagine he probably hits somewhere near the middle, whether it's 2 or 6. I don't know. But boy, what a good looking bat for Boston. And then of course the Padres signed Jerks Profar. So not and a role player there, right? Like just a guy who can is versatile, can play a number of positions in a pinch. Interesting. So again, that's been the week. That's a lot for 1 week of of baseball, right? Or of the offseason. There's been a lot going on there. And that's not everything, right? That's the ones, like I said, that are fantasy relevant for the most part. There was a couple. Darren O'Day's not fantasy relevant in most leagues. Ottavino's not relevant in most leagues. But it's just interesting in the fact that a lot of names move around and a lot of names that are going to influence whether teams are successful or not successful. So let's move into this NL East because there's a lot to take on here. There's a lot going on, and it seems to me this is going to be one of the more competitive leagues in the majors this year because it's just so. None of these teams are established, legitimate, right? So from appearances, the Mets seem to be the best team for the most part. But how do you discount a 1-2-3 like Washington has? How do you discount such a deep farm system that Atlanta has? There's just certain wild cards that really play in a factor here. So we'll just see how it goes. Let's go. So I went according to spending. Okay. So like I said, I've been on this website a lot lately. It's Cots Baseball Contracts, and they really break down, and it's pretty real time. What the 26-man opening day spending cap is. You can go in and it'll actually show you like spreadsheets of like who's making what. So we'll start with the Nationals, the number 3 team in the majors with 181.6. That's a lot of cake. That's not a team that's half-assing it. They're not mailing it in. They're in it to win it. And if you look at how they're built, it's kind of scary. $69 million wrapped up in Scherzer and Strasburg. That's over a third of their total contract or salaries wrapped up in 2 players. If you throw in Corbin, it's 93. That's $93 million for 3 players. Half of their salary is wrapped up in 3 players, guys. That's significant. That tells you, and it's their 1, 2, and 3 starting pitchers. What does that tell you about that team? That's how they're built. That's their foundation. Now, it's going to be an issue when some of these players, some of these younger players are up for getting signed off of the rookie contract. Players, especially so. Juan Soto making $8.5 million a year. That's not going to continue. They're going to have to pay him. Trey Turner making $13 million a year. They're going to have to pay him. I mean, they are paying him. Obviously, that's a significant amount. But Freddie Freeman's making $22 million. I'd say both of those players will command more than that. So they're going to be coming into a situation where they're going to have to make some tough decisions in Washington. So I think that's why you see them making these aggressive moves. They've gone out and they've signed Brad Hand for $10 million. They've gone out and they've signed Kyle Schwarber for $7 million. They traded for Josh Bell, 6.3. Those are actually pretty good contracts, all 3 of them. So what's going on here with the Nationals, right? What are we looking at? So you break them down. To me, a lot's depending on them on 2 players. Carter Kieboom and Victor Robles. Both of those guys are supposed to have a ton of potential, surefire, can't miss, and thus far they've missed. So as it stands right now, you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4 for the Nationals, solid. All of those guys, solid. Turner, Soto, Bell, Schwarber, I don't have any problem with any of those guys. When you get to 5, that's when it turns to garbage. and you've got some key guys that you need to come through. 5, Starling Castro. Probably a little bit underrated as a player over his career. He's always seemed to have a shadow overlooking him in some way, shape, or form. Chicago had all those young prospects, where he didn't all of a sudden got overshadowed. He seemed to find his way a little bit in Washington here, but as a 5-hitter, I just don't see it. He's more of a 6 or 7-hitter at this point in his career. But the big guys here to really pay attention to, and this is as we start talking about draft strategy, we start talking about approach. Victor Robles could be the steal of the draft. Because if you think about where you've taken him in years past versus where you're taking him this year, it's a significant difference, right? So start with this. Stolen bases are a premium. He has a fairly high floor when it comes to stolen bases. He's only 21 years old. He's really young still. But the fact of the matter is, as an 18-year-old, I think it was, he hit 255 with 17 homers and 28 stolen bases. I can't see a full season of him being healthy. Yes, okay, I'll start with this. He went from 280 in 2019 or 2017 to 255 in 2018 to 236 last year. You had a short season last year. It was really wonky last year. I'm willing to chalk that up on a young player to lack of, a number of things, right? You could go discipline, you could go regimen, you can go ability. I mean, where I was going with this is just not having the preseason and the farm system to kind of get juiced up for, right? So, of course, if you come out and you're automatically facing the one team, the A's, if you will, the A team, not the Athletics, then you're going to struggle as a young player because you're not going to be able to catch up. You don't get to face that inferior pitching, get your timing down. You're going right up there against the studs, right? That makes a big difference. Now, if Robles gets on base, you know he can run. 28 stolen bases to me seems like a floor. And especially in the outfield position, even if he hits 236, if he steals you 28 bases, that's a flipping deal. That's a steal, pun intended. I'm willing to bet that a 23-year-old player, whatever the heck it is going to have a good season this year. And if he starts hitting, if he gets back up there to that 280 he had in 2017, you'll see him hit at the top of the lineup. And that's when Washington gets dangerous. That's when they become a really good team. Now, they're always going to be able to pitch. Nobody out there east of Chavez Ravine is going to throw out a better 1-2-3 than what the Nationals are going to throw at you. Especially in a short season or a playoff series. When you're in a playoff series, you don't want to be facing those three guys because they all shorten the game. So the other guy to kind of watch there, and I'm not a big fan of this guy. I've never been a big fan of Kieboom, but they've put a lot of pressure on him. After hitting 32 homers in 2017 and 2018, he had exactly 0 in 122 plate appearances last year. That's not good. He hit 200. I don't see other redeeming values out of Kieboom if he can't hit. It's just like Gavin Lux. If Gavin Lux can't hit, he's not fantasy relevant anymore. It's not like Robles, who's always going to have speed. It's not like Schwarber, who's always going to have power. If these guys don't hit for a relatively high average, you're not going to see him long. And that's where I have a problem with the Nationals. There's no backup plan there that I see at this point. So if the Nationals are going to spend, and I feel they still will, you don't go down throwing $181 million if you're not serious about competing. Some guys I would consider: Marwin Gonzalez. Versatile. He could play all over the field. Grizzled veteran. Good bat. Maikel Franco would be a good pick here. Again, they've still not replaced Anthony Rendon. Franco might be. Now, Franco has holes, but that's okay. So does Keyboom. Keyboom has one big hole. At least Franco's are small. Renato Nunez is another guy, that I consider this out there. So I feel like they're going to spend some more, but I feel like it's going to be in that mid-tier range. And I think they're going to look for a guy who's going to carry a significant amount of power, and they prefer some versatility. Right behind the Nationals are the New York Mets. Durf, you're right. There is a rumor that the Mets are interested in Bauer. It's been widely known that Bauer doesn't care for pitching in New York. But if the Mets are going to give you Garrett Cole type money, I'm sure it's going to be tough to turn that down. Stay tuned. I like your proposal of the Angels. The Angels don't seem to be afraid of spending money either. But before we get into Bauer, let's first talk about how these Mets were built. So, again, 185th in the majors. They're built around DeGrom at $21 million. Their new addition, Francisco Lindor, at $22 million. And Marcus Stroman at $19 million. They've got a middle tier of guys that aren't. The one that sticks out to me is Familia making $12 million. Seems to me to be pretty steep. The rest of them, Conforto at $12.5 million, I feel like that's a pretty good deal. Carrasco at $12 million, not bad. McCann at 10. You let Ramos go for 2, and you sign McCann for 10. I get McCann's defense. That one kind of smells to me. I don't know. Anyway, $10 million for McCann. This team's well-rounded. Their offense is really good. The front of their pitching staff is really good. A lot of this is predicated off of whether Thor can come back and be effective, even before he got hurt. These last year's weird. Whenever it was, the last year, the year before, it just seems like one big weird year, right? 60-game season is a full season. But so a lot of the pitching staff will really depend on what Syndergaard does. But the offense, man, I just can't say it enough. What Frankie Lindor brings to the front of that Mets lineup, projected to be the leadoff hitter. You got, depending left or right after him, Nimmo, Conforto, Dom Smith, Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, J.D. Davis. That's a damn good offense, guy. I mean, I know the Mets are the Mets. They're going to mess stuff up. But this team right now seems to me, hitting-wise anyway, to be just about as good as anybody, notwithstanding the National League World Series champs, rather. So, this to me just seems to be the team to beat in the NL East. I'm not going to sing. Will the real Pete Alonso please stand up? Please stand up. Please stand up. I was going to sing that. I have not had enough of these yet. So I was surprised, right? You guys know I love to prorate these numbers. The big drop off for me for Pete Alonso is the batting average. He fell from 260 to 231. Now, I think a lot of us saw that coming. I told you last week, I'll continue to tell you this. I don't hold last year's statistics in and of themselves like I usually do. The season is just too short. Players playing 60 games don't have time to break out of slumps, to find their comfort level, to adjust their swings if they start out slow. There's so many things that a 60-game season just doesn't allow you to do. But that said, I feel like this is real. I feel like with Alonso, he really came out that first year, and the league didn't know how to pitch him. So he hit 16 homers last year. Project that out to a full season, that's 46 home runs. So that's not far off of the pace that he hit in 2019. That's pretty impressive if you really think about it, right? The thing about it for me, though, is these big league pitchers are so good. If they find a hole in your swing, they can turn Chris Davis into Chris Davis. People won't always forget Chris Davis hit 50 homers. But then they found a hole in his swing. And now he's the laughingstock of the league. I worry a little bit about that with Pete Alonso. Not that I think that's necessarily going to happen to him. I'm saying it wouldn't shock me if it did. His numbers project out pretty consistently. Like I said, 30-point drop in average. I could chalk that up to a number of things. Projected out 35 RBIs is 100 for the year. 31 runs is 89 for the year. Pretty much everything else is right on core. Strikeouts, struck out 61 times. That projects out to 174. That's actually less than 2019. So for what it's worth. And walks. Walks was 72 in 2019. His 24 would have projected out to 69. So really comparable across the board for Pete Alonso. I was surprised to see that. I thought there was a bigger drop-off there. Here's the thing. He's kind of a discount. Of course, I didn't write this down, so I'm going to go look at it. Fantasy Pros. Average ADP for Pete Alonso. Y'all remember last year he was a mid-second round pick? He's all the way down to 56, guys. That's a good deal. That's a good deal. We'll start talking about those guys next week. We'll start talking about guys that are maybe priced too low, especially if you're drafting early, right? Because these things normal out. The first couple bombs he hits in spring training, everybody's like, oh, yeah, that's right. Pete Alonso's pretty good. The wild cards to the Mets. Conforto, J.D. Davis, and Dominic Smith. That's the keys to this team. If those three guys perform, the Mets will be one of the best teams in baseball. If they don't, it might be a long year in Flushing. They've all shown glimpses. Conforto's been pretty consistent. But Conforto's also been borderline phenomenal at times. So there is still that consistency. It's just a little bit higher wavelength. Conforto, 259 career hitter, 3 seasons over 25 homers, just 27 years old. You got to love what Mike Conforto brings to the table. To me, he's the key to that team. J.D. Davis is a good ball player. hit 268 last year. Had a career year. We all remember back in 2019, 307, 22 homers. Is that repeatable? Or is the 247 that he hit last year what it really is? I think it's somewhere in between, right? 268 career. I think maybe he goes a little higher than that. He's got a great opportunity, though, because he's slated to hit number 2 against left-handed pitchers right now. And that would certainly boost his runs and his RBIs, hitting in that spot. So you would think that this could be a really good year for J.D. Davis. And the one that I'm really interested in is Dominique Smith. He's just 25 years old, guys. It feels like he's been around forever. He hit 316 with 10 homers last year at 25. He kind of doesn't have a place, right? He's not really a first baseman. He's not really an outfielder. They kind of force him into being an outfielder more often than not. But fact of the matter is, at just 25, he could be a steal, especially if you're looking at, drafting a guy like Alonso, who you might carry a lower average. Having that high batting average might be a godsend. I love getting a guy or two like Dominic Smith on your team, with hopes of the high batting average. His ADP is 100, guys. 100. So over his last 2 years, 139 games, Smith has hit 299 with 21 homers. That's a solid player. And let's be honest, if you get him a pick 100, you need to give yourself a pat on the back, because that's how you build winning teams. Durf mentioned earlier, I think it's time to talk about the Mets and Trevor Bauer. Interesting thing about Bauer, the Mets certainly at this point, again, we talk about playoff rotations. DeGrom, best pitcher in baseball, at least one of the top 2 or 3. Stroman and Carrasco. It's a really good, formidable playoff rotation. Again, I mentioned Thor. You'd imagine if the Mets get to the playoff, he's back to being the pitcher that we all know. So that kind of kicks either Carrasco or Stroman out. Now, what happens if you add Trevor Bauer to this lineup? Now you're putting Stroman and DeGrom at 4 and 5. Guys, those guys aren't 4 and 5 pitchers, but that's okay in this scenario. If you could team up DeGrom, Bauer, and Thor, you're all of a sudden talking about a team that compete with the Dodgers. And no one can compete with the Dodgers right now, right? But this is a team that if they go out and get Bauer, that's going to catapult them to the highest payroll automatically. But that's okay. Like I said, Steve Cohen doesn't give a flip about money. He wants to put a good team on the field, and he'll do that. So it's interesting because as much as Trevor Bauer hates the New York market, wouldn't it be funny to see him go and spite the Yankees by signing with this crosstown rival? I think that's a really good point to make. I just feel like Bauer seems to be that type of person that will stick it in your eye because he can. Here's what Bauer wants, Durf. Here's what Bauer wants, guys. He wants to sign with a team, and this sounds so weird, but this is the age we're living in. And I'm not saying that like judgmentally. I'm not. It's just different. He wants to sign with a team who, 2 things, will entertain the fact of him pitching every 4 days. Let's be realistic. That's probably not going to happen. Now, it could. He could pitch on a Monday and come back and maybe close on a Wednesday, right? That could be something he could do. The other thing he wants to sign with a team that's win now and that will help him build, I swear this is a quote, will help him build his social network. We all know Bauer's your typical pitcher. He's a little out there. We know about his drive cast stuff. We know about, his meticulous attention to detail when it comes to repeatability and sprint rate and all those things. I love it. I think it's, I wish there were more players out there as dedicated to their craft as Trevor Bauer is. I just feel like this is one of those scenarios, again, where Bauer says, you know what, you Yankees, I'm going to sign with the Mets. I love it. I think it's great. And I think it's a great fit. All of a sudden, it makes the Mets something totally different, right? And they're right now, again, one of the best teams in baseball, as they sit right now. The Phillies. So they got third team here in the National League East that's in the top 10 in the majors, the top third in payroll. $156 million, the ninth most in the majors. You want to talk about a competitive division. This is tough. The Philadelphia Phillies just went out and signed the largest contract ever per year volume for a catcher in JT Realmuto. $23.1 million. They've invested $26 million in Bryce Harper, $22 million in Zach Wheeler. This is the one that gets me. And $20 million in Andrew McCutchen. $20 million for Andrew McCutchen. Ouchie. But here's the thing about, again, much like some of the other teams I mentioned earlier, they've got some pretty cost-friendly contracts as well. Rhys Hoskins is making $4.8 million a year. Alec Baum's on his rookie contract. So is Spencer Howard. Scott Kingery is making $4.2 a year. Those are good values. And really, the Phillies are interesting because just like the Nationals, they're kind of depending on some players who have yet to really show me things. Alec Bohm, in particular, comes to mind. I feel like Alec Bohm comes through. I'm not as confident, well, I feel like Robles will come through. I do. But Bohm, to me, has a chance to be really special. Hitting him second in this lineup is a lot of pressure. That concerns me a little bit. But you look at McCutchen, Baum, Harper, Hoskins, pretty much Realmuto, pretty much going to be the same lineup, lefty or righty. Segura, the thing about the Phillies, are they comfortable with Segura at shortstop? Didi Gregorius is out there, made $14 million last year. It seems to me the Phillies aren't interested in signing them. Maybe they are. I don't know. Maybe they want to try and get him down from that. I feel like Didi Gregorius, $14 million, isn't a bad deal. I mean, sure, he's streaky. But when he's playing well, when he's hitting well, he's one of the best bats at that position in the game. So Didi Gregorius is going to be a big get for someone, okay? Right now, and look, Gene Segura is a good ball player. He's traditionally been a really good player back in Seattle, and even in the first couple of years in I think he's been in. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me. His first year in Philly last year didn't do so well, right? The thing about Philly that I feel like they need to address is the starting pitcher. So right now they're looking at Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler, and Spencer Howard. Not bad. Not bad. It's a good playoff rotation. Then you got Zach Eflin and Vince Velasquez. I feel like that's not enough. And that's not a knock on Eflin or Velasquez. It isn't. It's not meant to be. It's just it's kind of coming to truth with who they really are. And It's funny because some of these guys are really defensive players, and some of these guys are innings eaters, and some of these guys are just role players, right? I feel like that's what both Eflin and Velasquez are. If the Phillies were just to go out and sign a Jake Odorizzi, um, one of these middle tier type pitchers, um, a James Paxton, a Mike Leake, any of these guys that are, an established player, but maybe you can get it a little bit more of a discounted rate. I think all of a sudden you become a lot more formidable. But to me, even in a short series, the Phillies, from an arms perspective, are playing a little bit shorthanded against some of these other division rivals. So I look for them to spend there. I think it's probably still better off that they try and bring Gregorius back. They might still do that. They're definitely letting him test the market. So we'll see how that goes. Durf, that might be a good spot for him to go to the Angels now that Simmons is gone. I mean, it's one of those things that we'll see what happens, right? So the last team I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to talk about them shortly because we're going to talk about them a little bit tonight at 10. Join me tonight at 10, The Other Angle with Chappie and RC. Great show. We're, really more of a variety show. We'll talk about some football tonight, but, I think we're going to talk some basketball and a little bit of Braves talk too. So I won't linger on them. $118 million, the 18th most in the majors. The Braves are built from the minors up, and boy, that's done them well. Keys to the season for the Braves, for me, lie with Dansby Swanson, Austin Riley, and Christian Pache. Swanson looks like an all-star at times. He's just got to stay healthy and stay on the field. Sorry, Texas Christians beating Kansas at halftime. Anyway, we'll talk a little hoops tonight. Last year, Swanson actually played all 60 games. His defense is phenomenal. His offense has, it has really been. Sorry, I'm getting a little mixed up here with my guys. 15 homers last year. 15 homers last year. And a 274 average. You really got to like that. That projects up to 28 home runs over a full season. You get that out of Swanson, you're happy. He's capable of it. He's just never been able to put consistent months together. He did that last year. He played in every game. But it'll be interesting to see what happens this year. There's certainly a lot of expectation placed upon him. He's slated to hit right in the middle of that lineup at fifth. Last year that was Osuna's spot. I don't think they'll bring him back. There's a lot of opportunity there. Same with Austin Riley. If you think about what's gone on with Riley, he's played 131 major league games. A lot of those games have been out of position. He's hit 26 homers in those 131 games. His average could get better. He's 239. It's not killing you. It's not helping you. You'd like to see it raise about 15, 20 points. 250 seems to be the barometer there, right? But I say it every year. You can kind of overcome that. The Braves are built. Freddie Freeman's making $22.35 million. Charlie Morton's making $15 million. Will Smith, the pitcher, $13 million. And then you got all these rookie contracts, right? You got semantics. With Albies, it's not a rookie contract. He's making $3 million. Acuna's not a rookie million contract. He's making $5 million, guys. $5 million. Seems like a pretty good deal. The rotation for the Braves, that's where it kind of starts to get a little fuzzy. The workings are there. Soraka, Fried, Anderson, Morton, certainly formidable. Certainly, if they all can stay healthy, um, can shut you down. They've got a few options, behind them. Kyle Wright, Drew Smiley, Kyle Muller, Bryce Wilson. But I feel like, and we'll talk about this tonight, at $118 million, I feel like the Braves need to spend on a pitcher. This would be a great spot for Bauer. This would be the right spot for Bauer. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it'd be more likely they sign a Odorizzi or someone like that. But they need another arm in that rotation, not to have to worry about the development of a Kyle Wright or an Ian Anderson as much. They really need to kind of get some established guys in that rotation if they want to contend with the firepower at this time in this league. Not going to talk about the Marlins. $55 million, 27th in the majors. I will say this about the Marlins. They're building. And I feel like Jeter's doing it right. Not really a whole bunch to speak of on the prospect front. The building blocks there, obviously, Starling Marte they traded for. Aguilar is one of those guys that, he could be good. But the young pitching staff, to me, if you look at the age of the pitching staff, 25, 24, 25, 22, 23, none of them are big name guys at this point. But those of us that follow baseball know that Alcantara, Lopez, Eliezer Hernandez, Trevor Rogers all have a lot of potential and throw the ball effectively. So it'll be interesting to see the development of those guys. That's definitely the bedrock of that team, especially in these next couple of years, is that young pitching staff. Jazz Chisholm had a really bad 2019. JJ Bleday is lights out good. Just a matter of time before he's hitting in the middle of that lineup. Vanderbilt, I think, is where he's from. Sorry, some of those prospects early on in the year. It takes me a second. So I'm going to stop there. That's the NL East. I'm not going to do all of these divisions. I might pick another one to do out next week. Maybe the NL Central. Maybe the NL West. I don't know. But, we're going to start talking about drafting next week because we're getting to that point in the year. Enough of these guys have signed. There's still some big name players out there. And we'll talk about that some next week. Until next time. And next time is an hour. The other angle, Chappie and RC. Until next time. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the content. Chap's Fantasy Chat, Thursdays at 8. The other angles with Chappie with RC, Thursdays at 10. Join Chappie's Fantasy Sports on Facebook. At Chappie's_locks on Twitter. Thanks for joining me, you guys. I'll see y'all soon.